Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Here we are again. It's another Wednesday night, and we're all still under house arrest, which happens, and, we're going to get through all of this together. The governor originally told us we'd be back in business by April the 7th, and that was wishful thinking for sure. Anyway, for the next hour, we're not going to worry about the sequestering or the quarantine or any of those issues. We're just going to fight back with Ragtime. Jerry out west told me that would be the great title for this series. We're going to fight back with Ragtime. And so for the next hour, we're going to be playing some good old Ragtime and telling some stories and having some fun and forgetting about all our cares and troubles. Of course, we have Banjo Betsy on the banjo, as usual, the tenor banjo. She's been playing that for 10 or more years by now. On the string bass, Wes Linenkugel. He's also a fine tenor banjo player, but we decided to give him the longer strings here tonight, just in appreciation of Wes's being able to play just about any instrument. Wes put on a terrific concert last night on the hammered dulcimer, and I believe that's still up on YouTube if you'd like to see it. You can find any of these things by going to the Grafing Productions YouTube channel, and that's, of course, Grafing the way my family spells it, G-R-A-F, 1-F-I-N-G. Every spell check in the world tells me I'm spelling my name wrong, and it usually corrects it incorrectly. There's another story behind that. But before we start with any of the stories, we're going to start with a song. We're going to play a Jelly Roll Morton tune that he wrote when he was in New York, which is actually where I originally came from. Here's a song called Good Old New York. Jelly Roll actually sang this one. I'm not going to. All right, Good Old New York was the name of that tune. That was a Jelly Roll Morton composition. Jelly Roll Morton obviously was not from New York originally. He was a New Orleans boy, but he brought jazz everywhere he went. Brought jazz to Chicago, later to New York, and he became one of the great disciples of jazz. Really talented composer, piano player, band leader, pool shark, raconteur, and a very, very colorful character. Oh, where did this come from? Oh, we had a patron of the arts. We want to say thank you very much. It's my first today. What do you know? We appreciate that very much. Good old New York. Well, as long as we're playing a New York song, we might as well play a Broadway song. I guess this is technically a Broadway song because it was a Broadway show. It was in a Broadway show that got updated every year. And year after year, it was the Broadway melody of 1927, and then the Broadway melody of 1928, and the Broadway melody of 1929. And the theme song was always a tune called the Broadway Melody. Songs that have been written over the years, that was one of them. And of all the songs we've ever played on these Wednesday night concerts, that one was definitely the most recent. Yes. All right, the Broadway Melody. All right, we're going to keep going with the music and a little fun and frivolity as we go along. And every once in a while, I'll be playing to a live audience. That means a live audience is actually in the room when I'm playing, and I'll say, all right, I'm going to go back and play a song from, say, 1910. And inevitably, most of the people in the room will say, oh, well, that's way before my time. I wouldn't know any songs from 1910. Oh, that's just so much before my time. There's no way I would know this song. And I say, well, you'll probably know this song. And they say, well, you can play it, but I won't know it. And I say, well, if you know it, will you sing along? And they usually say, well, okay, but I'm not going to know it. And I'll say, well, we'll see about that. So I'll play the big hit song, or at least one of the really big hit songs from 1910. The song has been played for ever since, and I'm sure most people know it. We can have you sing along if you like, because we're not going to hear you. Even if you were here, we don't ever put up a sign that says, you got to sing good to come in here. So you're welcome to join in and sing along with us anytime, but this is a song that just not everybody knows. Let me call you sweetheart, I'm in love with you. Let me hear you whisper that you love me too. Keep the love light glowing in your eyes, so true. Let me call you sweetheart, I'm in love with you. Let me call you sweetheart, I'm in love with you. Let me hear you whisper that you love me too. Keep the love light glowing in your eyes, so true. Let me call you sweetheart, I'm in love with you. Let me call you sweetheart, I'm in love with you. There you have it. Big hit song of 1910, and the chances are that even if you don't remember 1910, you remember that song. The original title, of course, was Let Me Call You Sweetheart, I Forgot Your Name. If we had a drummer, we would have had a rim shot right then, but we'll have to use our imaginations. But that was the big hit song of 1910, or at least one of them, Let Me Call You Sweetheart, or in the days of the telephone, Let Me Call You, comma, Sweetheart. That song makes me thirsty. By the way, terrific brew from the Ernest Brewing Company, which is a small brew pub and microbrewery in Toledo, Ohio, on Detroit Avenue, right near River Road, I think it is. Yes. Yeah. It's a great little brewery, great little brew pub. They make some wonderful brews, and we're very much enjoying their Irish red. It's their Irish red cream ale. It's a very, very good product. They brew some great beers. We're lucky now that all these brew pubs have come along. Toledo has several really good ones. There's the Ernest Brewing Company in South Toledo. There's the Maumee Bay Brewing Company in downtown Toledo. We will be there tomorrow night for a concert by Tim Tieterman and Dave Stella. And, I shouldn't forget Clark Brooks, right. He's the drummer. He doesn't play with the Grape Smugglers. That's the group that I know. Tim Tiedemann and Dave Stella are both in the Grape Smugglers. Clark Brooks is in a different group with Tim Tiedemann. What's that? Bernie's going to be on bass tomorrow. I had no idea. All right, they're going to do a quartet. Yeah. Well, that's great. Yeah. That'll be tomorrow night on this very YouTube channel. You can look up the Grafing Productions YouTube channel and see all of these live performances. And I believe there'll be another one on Friday night. The house band will be playing. So we're doing our best to bring live music to you, even in this day and age when we can't get together and experience it in person. So we played one of the big hit songs from 1910, and everybody always says, well, okay, so I remember that song, but that's just kind of a fluke. That song's been popular for so long, and I'll remember it. And I'll say, well, you probably remember one of the big hit songs from 1909 as well. And then they start to think I'm goofing around, playing with them. But the big hit song, or at least one of them, from 1909, started off like this. Place, park, scene, dark, silvery moon is shining through the trees. Cast to me you, sounds of kisses floating on the breeze. Act 1, begun, dialogue, how would you like to spoon? My you, with you, underneath the silvery moon. By the light of the silvery moon, I want a spoon. To my honey I'll croon love's tune. Honeymoon, keep a shining in June. Your silvery beams will bring love's dreams. We'll be cuddling soon by the silvery moon. Scene new, roses blooming all around the place. Cast 3, you, me, preacher with a solemn looking face. Choir sing, bells ring, preacher, you are wed forevermore. Act 2, all through, every night the same encore. By the light of the silvery moon, I want a spoon. To my honey I'll croon a love tune. Honeymoon, keep a shining in June. Your silvery beams will bring love's dreams. We'll be cuddling soon by the silvery moon. Light of the Silvery Moon, one of those big hit songs from 1909. Of course, it's been performed many times since. Doris Day had a very popular recording of that song in the 1950s. Fats Waller actually recorded it and did a nice job. He was actually serious. He must have liked the song, because when he didn't like a song, he'd burlesque it all over the place. But he did a nice job with By the Light of the Silvery Moon. And that's one of those songs that you can hear on Saturday mornings on Toledo's second oldest radio station. It's still 12:30 on the AM radio dial, WCWA. Nowadays, Monday through Friday, it's Fox Sports Radio. But on Saturday mornings, we still go into the archives, into the old Seaway Music Library that they never got rid of. And from 6 in the morning until 12 noon, we relive those glorious days gone by. Now, I start at 6 o'clock with the early morning oldies. When I say the oldies, nowadays you listen to an oldie station and they're playing songs from the 90s. Our oldies are the 50s and 60s, the doo-wop and the great harmonies and so forth from the early days of, well, rock and roll and rhythm and blues and all sorts of great stuff. At 8 o'clock, a fellow named Johnny Trumpet, well, actually his name is John Grafing, and I'd introduce him right now, but he's got headphones on and he's busy running the sound and lights and cameras and all that sort of thing, so he's kind of busy. But when he's not busy running the sound and lights and all those other things, he is the MC, if you will, for the hour from 8 until 9 o'clock on WCWA. And that's the Extravaganza warm-up show. And then I come back at 9 a.m. with a Saturday morning Extravaganza, and that goes all the way until the hour of 12 noon. And we play all sorts of great music and have all sorts of fun and frivolity every Saturday morning. It's still 12:30 on the AM radio dial if you're in the Toledo area. It is an iHeart radio station, and you can pick it up streaming at 1230foxsports.com. So much for the shameless plug. The Saturday morning Extravaganza, you're all invited to join me every Saturday morning. Well, we played a song from 1909, and that was very good, but we can keep going backwards from there. One of the big hit songs of 1908 was introduced in the Ziegfeld Follies of 1908 by the big star of the Ziegfeld Follies in those years, a gal named Nora Bayes. And Nora Bayes was married to a fellow named Jack Norworth, and he was a pretty successful songwriter. I guarantee you will remember some of the songs that Jack Norworth wrote. And one of them, he and Nora Bayes got together and they wrote in 1908. She introduced it into the Ziegfeld Follies, and we've heard it every year since. It's a song everybody will remember. It starts like this. Shine on, harvest moon, up in the sky. I ain't had no lovin' since January, February, June, or July. Snow time, ain't no time to stay outdoors and spoon. So shine on, harvest moon, for me and my gal. And then the dancing girls come out. We got any dancing girls? Oh, probably not. If we had any dancing girls, we wouldn't be allowed to have more than 10 of them. 10 beautiful girls and 9 beautiful costumes. The night was kind of dark, so you could hardly see, for the moon refused to shine. A couple sitting underneath the willow tree, for love they pine. The little miss is kind of scared of dark, so she says, I guess I'll go. The boy began to sigh, looked up at the sky, told the moon his little tale of woe. Oh, shine on, harvest moon. Where is it? Up in the sky. I ain't had no lovin' since January 1975. Snow time, ain't no time to stay outdoors and spoon. So shine on, harvest moon, for me and my gal. Big hit song of 1908, introduced in the Ziegfeld Follies of 1908 by Nora Bayes, written by Nora Bayes herself and her husband, Jack Norworth. Big hit song of 1908. So how do you follow a song from 1908? We'll go back to 1907. Now, most people, I think, at least those of us over 30 will remember Shine on Harvest Moon, but just about everybody in the world will remember the big hit song that was written by Jack Norworth, the fellow who was married to Nora Bayes, although I don't think they got married until about 1908, but he wrote a song with a guy named Albert von Tilzer. Albert von Tilzer was one of the von Tilzer brothers. There was Albert and Harry von Tilzer, and there was Jack, and there were a couple more, although not all of them called themselves von Tilzers. Their real name was Gumm, G-U-M-M. They didn't think that sounded like a show business name, so I believe it was Harry who said, well, he'd take his mother's maiden name, which was Tilzer, and that sounded pretty good, and he figured if he added a von in front of it, it made him sound important. So Harry von Tilzer became a very popular composer, songwriter, and also music publisher. And his brothers joined him in the show business, if you will, in the music business in New York during those Tin Pan Alley years. But it was Albert von Tilzer, one of Harry's brothers, who got together with Jack Norworth in 1907, and they wrote a song that everybody in the world remembers. And of course, when I say it's a song from 1907, they'll say, well, yeah, okay, I'm sure I never heard of it, but even little kids will sing along with us when we play this one. And Cracker Jacks. I don't care if I ever get back. Let me root for the home team. If they don't win, it's a shame. For it's 1, 2, 3 strikes, you're out at the old ball. One more time now. Take me out to the ball game. Take me out to the crowd. Buy me some peanuts and Cracker Jack. I don't care if I ever get back. Let me root for the Mud Hens. If they don't win, it's a shame. For it's 1, 2, 3 strikes, you're out at the old ball game. Take Me Out to the Ball Game. Big hit song in 1907. And if you've never heard that song before, you must have been living under a rock. Hey, camera 3, zoom in on Betsy on that. Never mind. We'll get that later. Take Me Out to the Ball Game. That's a great tune and came out in 1907. And the interesting thing about that song is it was written by Jack Norworth and Albert von Tilzer, and neither one of those guys had ever been to a baseball game when they wrote the song. Not only that, they didn't get to a baseball game until about 25 years later, and everybody at the ballpark is singing Take Me Out to the Ball Game. The guys that wrote the song had never seen one. In all fairness, you had to really want to see a baseball game in 1907. You couldn't watch one on TV or stream it over the internet or even listen to it on the radio. I've done some research and found out that even though radio sort of existed in 1907, they were just spark gap transmitters and only Morse code, and they didn't do any play-by-play from any ballpark until a number of years later. So Take Me Out to the Ball Game was the big popular song in 1907, and those guys had never been to a baseball game and didn't get to one until almost 25 years later. So there's a little bit of history for you, as well as what Betsy calls the facts that I come up with, and she calls me a fountain of useless knowledge. And that was some of it.
Biggest fountain.
All right, we're going to move on now to 1920. Yeah, we're going to play some new stuff. Yeah, oh, yeah. Well, it's time to make a U-turn, yes. Oh, by the way, you may have noticed on that song I sang one time through, I sang, let us root, root, root for the Mud Hens. And the reason I did that is because in the original sheet music, the words were, let me root, root, root for the, and the words home team were in parentheses, and there was a little arrow that said, insert the name of your local baseball team. And in the city of Toledo, that would have been the Toledo Mud Hens, which were a very popular baseball team back in 1907, and they're still very popular. It's interesting enough to note that when I moved to Toledo from New York City in 1962, There was no baseball team in Toledo, and the Mud Hens didn't move back until a year later. And actually, they played just outside the city of Toledo for many years until they eventually moved, built a brand new stadium, Fifth Third Field in downtown Toledo. And they moved from the suburb of Maumee at the Lukes County Recreation Center, which is basically a good base hit from Toledo anyway, so it's pretty close. But the Mud Hens are in downtown Toledo, and we hope they're able to play this year. Speaking of playing, we're going to do that ourselves, and we're going to play a song that was a big hit for Paul Whiteman in 1920. And it starts off, "Honey, I have something to tell you, and it's worth your while listening to. Put your weary head on my shoulder so that I can whisper to you. Whispering while you cuddle near me. Whispering so no one can hear me. Each little whisper seems to cheer me. I know it's true, there's no one near but you. You're whispering why you'll never grieve me. Whispering why you'll never leave me. Whisper and say that you believe me. Whispering that I love you. Whispering while you cuddle near me. Whispering so no one can hear me. Each little whisper seems to cheer me. I know it's true, there's no one dear but you. You're whispering why you'll never grieve me. Whispering why you'll never leave me. Whisper and say that you believe me. Whispering that I love Whispering, well, that's kind of the way it sounded when I played it on the Victrola and learned it, yes. Whispering We've been having trouble with that one. That happens.
Practice.
Actually, I don't think the kids today would understand that. You'd say to a kid today, you sound like a broken record, and they have no idea what you're talking about. Oh, well, we certainly know, and we're going to keep that a secret amongst us. That's right. All right, well, there was a song written by the great composer and vaudeville star Joe Howard. He wrote actually quite a number of songs. And I think we played one or two of them on our Wednesday night broadcasts, but the problem is I can't remember which ones I've played from one week to the next. I think we played Hello My Baby, didn't we?
Yes, we did.
And I don't think we played Goodbye My Lady Love. We didn't play that one. Did we play I Wonder Who's Kissing Her Now?
No.
We didn't. That was one of Joe Howard's biggest songs, and actually they even made a movie about him. And they called the movie I Wonder Who's Kissing Her Now. And it, I forget who starred in the movie, but I remember watching it on the Big Show, which was the 4 o'clock movie on Channel 11. Once upon a time, yeah, the Big Show. Joe Ashton, the weatherman, used to come in and do dialing for dollars. If you knew the amount, you would win however much the jackpot was. And if you didn't know, it would go up another $5, and he'd try again later on. But Joe Howard wrote this song way back, I don't remember what year, 1905 or something like that. And it was a real big hit. If he had written it today, he would have had to modernize it, but the way he wrote it in those days was, you've loved many girls in the sweet long ago, and each one has meant heaven to you. You vowed your affections for each one in turn, and to each one you've sworn you'd be true. You've kissed 'neath the moon when the world was in tune, then you left her to find some new game. Has it ever occurred to you later, my boy, that she's probably doing the same? I wonder who's kissing her now. I wonder who's teaching her how. Wonder who's looking into her eyes, breathing sighs, telling lies. I wonder who's buying the wine for lips that I used to call mine. And I wonder if she ever tells him of me. I wonder who's kissing her now. Now, if Joe Howard were to have written that song today, he'd have to change the words or add a couple verses that would sound something like this. She had her face lifted last June. The tummy tuck followed too soon. The surgeon who promised to trim her thighs told her lies, crossed her eyes. The smile that she wears on her face has come from all over the place. When I get to her chin, I can't tell where it's been. I wonder what's kissing me now. She went to the doctor once more and ended up worse than before. Those silicone implants didn't help her chest. 1 point east, 1 point west. Her body's no longer her own, and some of the parts are on loan. And I'll tell you what's weird, on her face there's a beard. And I hate to think where that came from. I wonder what's kissing me now. Well, our apologies to Joe Howard. I think Joe Howard, if I remember right, I should look this stuff up so I know what I'm talking about. I believe that Joe Howard was married to a gal named Ida Emerson. And she was also an entertainer. What's that? Ida Emerson, Joe Howard and Ida Emerson were a team. And I'm not sure who wrote the song, but Joe Howard probably sang it. Eddie Cantor certainly did sing it. Eddie Cantor, Old Banjo Eyes. It was a tune that went, Ida, sweet as apple cider, sweeter than all I know. Come out in the silvery moonlight of love will whisper, so soft and low. Seems though can't live without you. Listen, oh honeydew, Ida, I'd idolize ya, because I love you, Ida, indeed I do. I'd idolize ya, because I love you, Ida, indeed I do. Ida, sweet as apple cider. There's a song that Eddie Cantor used to sing, whose wife was also named Ida, but not Emerson. That was Ida Cantor. Eddie Condon was quite an entertainer. He was popular on stage for years and years and years, was a very close friend and rival at the same time to Al Jolson. And Eddie Cantor never stood still when he was entertaining. He'd always be going back and forth the stage and moving his arms and never stood still. And years later, somebody asked him, Eddie, how come you never stayed still when you were entertaining in those days? And Eddie Cantor said, because in those days, it was much more difficult to hit a moving target with a tomato. Show business was a dangerous trade back in those days. Those were not virtual tomatoes. Not by any means. Eddie Cantor had 5 daughters. And he used to talk about them all the time on radio. He was on Sundays on the radio and used to always talk about his daughters. Got a lot of fan mail about them. The daughters were sometimes embarrassed that their dad was talking about them all over the country. I spoke to a woman in Toledo a few years ago, and she was in her 80s. And she said that when she was a little girl, Eddie Cantor was coming to town. And the radio station was having a big contest. And they said the first family that can get down to the radio station with 5 daughters will get a command performance by Eddie Cantor. And so she said her father scooped up her and her 4 sisters and loaded them into the car and took them downtown. And sure enough, they got to the radio station. They were the first family there. And they got to meet Eddie Cantor, and he took them out to dinner. And afterwards, when he had his show in the big theater in downtown Toledo, they had front row seats. And she was well into her 80s and said she's never forgotten the wonderful time she had with the great entertainer Eddie Cantor. Eddie Cantor's oldest daughter was named Margie. I don't know whether the song Margie or the daughter Margie came out first. I don't know which one came out first, but Margie, the song, was a very popular tune as performed by Eddie Cantor himself. You may remember it. Eddie Cantor used to sing, "My little Margie, I'm always thinking of you, Margie. I'll tell the world I'll love you, don't forget your promise to me. I have a home and ring and everything for Margie. You've been my inspiration, the days are never blue. After all is said and done, there is really only one, oh Margie, Margie, it's you." Talk about your love affair. Here's what I'd like to tell to you. All night long we sit upon the stair. I hold her hand and start to woo my little Margie. She has a car and chauffeur, Margie. What nice long rides we go for. When we park, we cuddle and such. And if a cop comes, oh boy, do I release my clutch on Margie. I wish she'd keep exclusive company with me. Well, she'll go out on other dates, but she always wears her skates, 'cause Margie, Margie is mine. Margie. That's a song that Eddie Cantor made very, very popular once upon a time, My Little Margie. And that was the name of his oldest daughter as well as the name of the song. All right, well, we've been playing lots of songs from the ragtime era and lots of songs from Tin Pan Alley, but I don't think we've played any true ragtime yet tonight. So I think we should probably do that. We've had quite a number of requests, but we're going to keep playing anyway. And, yes, an answer to, never mind. We have another beer coming. Oh, that's great. I know this looks like beer, but it's really only iced tea. If the censors are watching, you're fine. Anyway, all right, see if my fingers will work on some real honest-to-goodness ragtime. Go back to 1899 here. facsimile of the Maple Leaf Rag, big hit song from 1899. It actually kept Stark and Company, publishing company, in business for years and years and years and years. It's interesting, there was a fellow named Edward B. Marks who was a music publisher also in those years, and he published one of Scott Joplin's later rags. I think it was Scott Joplin's new rag that he actually published. But he actually knew Scott Joplin, and he wrote a book in around 1934. And the book was called They All Sang from Tony Pastor to Rudy Valley. And he was talking about the music industry from the 1890s right until just as Prohibition was being repealed. A fascinating book. And anyway, he was telling the story about how he met Scott Joplin, and Scott Joplin told him, nobody's going to appreciate my music until 25 years after I'm dead. And Edward B. Marks wrote those words in 1934, and Son of a Gun, it was about 40 years later that the movie Sting came out, and all of a sudden everybody heard about Scott Joplin and who he was. What's that? What key did I play that in? The original key it was written in was written in the key of A flat, and then we can play in any flat as long as we have the key. But it was written in the key of A flat, and then it goes into D flat, I believe, in the third strain. But that's the way it was originally written. And I know that because my grandfather played that song when it first came out. He played it on the banjo, and his brother-in-law played piano. And the two of them played at every house party during Prohibition. He got really good at playing banjo and making bootleg hooch, as he called it, which he actually saved some for me. And he and I, when I turned 21, clinked glasses and drank the last of the hooch. That's another great story. I got all of these notes, and I'm not going to be able to read all of these. Oh, the bar band is hanging around. That's good to hear, and lots of nice notes. Oh, that's a good song. Yeah, they're all good songs. Speaking of good songs, we're going to get another one in. And this is one, we don't take requests. We can be bribed, but actually, unless the staff, which telegraphs these things in or faxes them in from afar, unless they do these things for us, we don't know what comments people are making until we watch the rerun of this event later on. Anyway, if we did accept a request, we'd accept this one. Or maybe it would be a bribe. True love never does run smooth, at least that's what I'm told. And if that is true, then our love surely must be good as gold. How we battle every day, and when she wants a kiss, I've got to start explaining, and it sounds about like this. Dearie, please don't be angry, 'cause I was only teasing you. I wouldn't even think of leaving, honey, 'cause I love you true. Now just because I took a look at somebody else, that's no reason you should put poor me on the shelf. Dearie, please don't be angry, 'cause I was only teasing trying to find someone new. So don't believe just what you hear, just wait till you see. And then you'll find no cause to show you're jealous of me. Dearie, please don't be angry, 'cause I was only teasing you. Dearie, please don't be angry. Tiny Hill, I believe, was the guy that had the hit record of that song, and there's a name from the past. That's somebody that you don't hear about much anymore. Dearie, please don't be angry. I guess we had a few other requests come in, and we're probably not going to have time for them. Sorry about that, but you'll have to tune in next week, and maybe we can do them then. We'll see what we can do. Of course, one of the greatest composers who ever lived was the fellow named Irving Berlin. Irving Berlin lived to be 101 years old. There's quite a story about the night he died at the age of 101. I'm not going to tell it right this moment, but Irving Berlin wrote some terrific songs over the years. He's the guy who wrote I'm Dreaming of a White Christmas and Easter Parade. Two kind of incredibly nice songs for a fellow who was Jewish, but he was mainly American, and he felt American, and he was really devoted to this country. He joined the Army during World War I and actually was involved in entertaining the troops at Camp Yap Hank in New York. Wrote a show called Yip Yap Yap Hank. That's another story. But he also wrote a lot of songs that were used by all the great entertainers of the day, and one of them was a fellow named Al Jolson. And of course, Al Jolson starred in the Warner Brothers talking picture, The Jazz Singer, which was the first full-length movie that was a talking picture. Warner Brothers had been making those Vitaphone short subjects, basically one-reel movies with one gigantic phonograph record that had the sound on them, and they had them synchronized. And they found that that was amazing. Sam Warner thought it was fabulous that they could get such good sound out of these talking pictures, and he saw the talking pictures as a music vehicle, kind of like what we're doing now, as opposed to an entertainment vehicle, because the movies were always considered to be a different sort of form of entertainment. They were different from a play or a Broadway show. But when The Jazz Singer came out, everything changed. And Jolson wound up making, I think, 3 more movies for Warner Brothers along the way. One of them was The Singin' Fool, and that's where he introduced the song Sonny Boy. And I think that song was so well received that the sales of handkerchiefs went noticeably up the year that movie came out. And they also made another movie, I believe it was called Mammy. And there was a song in that Irving Berlin wrote that's really a wonderful tune that applies today as much or more than it did when the song was first written, first performed by Al Jolson. And when we look at all the politicians and see all the things that they say and listen to all the conflicting things that they tell us, and you don't know who to believe, this song really, really kind of hits a nerve. What care I who writes the laws of a nation? Let men who will determine what's right or wrong. What care I who cares for the world's affairs, as long as I can sing a popular song? Let me sing a funny song with crazy words that roll along. And if my song can start you laughing, I'm happy, happy. Let me sing a sad refrain of broken hearts that loved in vain. And if my song can start you crying, I'm happy. Let me croon a low-down blues that lifts you out of your seat. If my blues can reach your shoes and start you tapping your feet, I'm happy. Let me sing of Dixie's charms, of cotton fields and Mammy's arms. And if my song can make you homesick, I'm happy. Low-down blues that lifts you out of your seat. If my blues can reach your shoes and start you tapping your feet, I'm happy. Let me sing of Dixie's charms, of cotton fields and Mammy's arms. And if my song can make you homesick, I'm happy. Let me sing and I'm happy. Those are some of the most honest words ever written, and they were written by Irving Berlin around 90 years ago. Well, we've had a wonderful time this last hour. One of the fun things that we've been doing during these Wednesday night concerts is we've been learning all of the intricacies of internet broadcasting, and it's a lot more complicated than you may think. It's really very simple to post any video. You can do that from your cell phone. You can post those on YouTube. But doing a live video stream is much more complicated, and we've learned that you have to do all sorts of things with the video and with the audio and with the internet connections that are way above and beyond what we ever imagined. But I think we're probably getting better at it, and we're going to keep working at it until we get it right, or until they lift this ban and let us go out and play in the clubs again, whichever comes first. But we want to say thank you all for tuning in, and we've got a new camera here that John Grafing decided, oh yeah, for those of you who haven't noticed, our shirts, mine is considerably wider than Betsy. We had to get a wide-angle camera so that you could show my entire shirt. And yes, this is the Kitchener-Waterloo Dixieland Club, a wonderful organization that our neighbors to the north just enjoy tremendously. We're going to get up there one of these days when they let us across the border again. So we want to say hi to Wayno and to Nancy and to all our great friends up in Kitchener. We want to say hello to all of our Canadian friends and their friends wherever you may be watching. And we're going to keep working on this video thing and these video internet broadcasts until we get it right, or until the quarantine's lifted, whichever comes first. And in the meantime, we're going to say, oh, well, that about wraps it up for tonight. Thanks, Johnny got a brand new camera, but he didn't get a new battery. And the low battery light is flashing right now. So we better quick hurry up. I think we have one tune, or time for one last song. So we'll say thank you very much. We'll see you again someplace. Don't know where, don't know when, but we'll see you again. Saturday morning, I'll see you on the radio. AM 1230 WCWA, and until then, I'll see you in my dreams. Hold you in my dreams. Someone took you out of my arms. Still I feel the thrill of your charms, lips that once were mine, tender eyes that shine, they will light my way tonight. I'll see you in my dreams. thank you all for tuning in. We certainly appreciate it. I will read all the comments, and eventually I'll return all the emails. I'm way behind in that. But thank you all for tuning in. We'll see you next week. Saturday morning, I'll see you on the radio, and until then, I'll see you in my dreams. Good night, everybody.